Okay, welcome back to Midwest Fantasy Football. It is week 1 of a new season. Season number 13, I think, is this starting. So, as normal, Ricky is joining me again this season to make fun of all of your terrible life choices. It's much easier since the radio personality can come in and just kind of wing it, and I don't have to do nearly as much prep. So, I appreciate her doing that. And with that being said, the first matchup that we're going to talk about this week is... That's the wrong tab. All right, there we go. First matchup is Nick's T-Bolden girls grabs a win right out of the gate, a high score, knocking off Derek's Haktua, 144.76 to 137.32. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, first of all, Derek needs to have the right quarterback for that name. Tua actually was sitting on Nick's bench, which I thought was quite funny in this. However, the most interesting thing that Derek had going on this week is his kicker was like the second highest point scorer on his team. I remember watching that game, and he kicked a 66-yard field goal that was nullified because Mike McCarthy planned a timeout wrong, and they were lining up to go for the 71-yarder, and I was really disappointed they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, also on his team, Tyreek Hill ran obviously very angry, because he started that early on a Sunday morning.
Yep.
He had 29 points for him. Otherwise, a pretty solid week for him. He didn't leave too many points on his bench.
I think the Hawk Tua nickname there is for the Hawk. So he's got TJ Hawkinson on his bench in his IR spot. I think that's where the Hawk part comes. I don't know if he's planning to acquire Tua later in the year, knowing that he normally just tries to acquire Kyler Murray. And he don't even think he could have Kyler Murray. Literally, you traded Kyler Murray for a 6-pack of beer, and you don't even have him on your team now. What are you doing? Anyways, how about Nick's team?
Well, probably drinking beer.
Well, that'd be Nick. Nick got the beer.
Oh.
Derek got Kyler Murray.
But he didn't get any beer. That's not a good trade. Anyway.
Don't look at me. I didn't make it.
All right, Nick with his what are we now? We're probably year 12 of Tebow as well.
It's been a while. I don't know when you started doing the Tebow naming. Pretty early on. I don't know if it was right from the get-go.
All right, he actually had a pretty solid week.
All right, I don't want to look at that while you're talking.
He had a pretty solid week as well. His quarterback did what he was supposed to do, put up 28.6 points. 28.16 points. Pretty solid week. One little mistake he did make. Ramondre Stevenson still on his bench. And looking at his projections, even if you'd have just put him in at flex, you would have had a 24-point swing. Not that you needed more points to bury Derek, but yeah, it could have helped him out a little bit.
Yeah. Nick called out the real great projection comment here is that the early season projections projected Nick to go 1-13 in the season, and he's the high scorer and got his one win out of the way, so he's basically projected now to lose for the rest of the season. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, I mean, that really is just basically he's going to be not the favorite in all of those matchups. As evidenced by the original projection here, Derek was favored 116 to 110. But Nick starting off the right foot. Nick has been Team Tebow named the entire team, so on time. In 2012, his team name was Praise Be to Tebow. So, and he got second place that year. So, cool. Anything else?
No, that's about it.
All right, moving on to our second matchup. We got closest matchup. This is this week's matchup. What changed? That's so weird. Did it do that with anything else? No, just.
I'm gonna go with its user error.
It's almost certainly user error. What happened here? What was the second matchup you had listed?
Brandon and Chris.
Calling
it a matchup, though, is rather generous.
Well, that's fair because we were going to talk about the biggest blowout in week 2, or in week 1 to start with, and Brandon kind of stomped the hell out of Chris, 138.1 to 71.6. Brandon's blown call, not any blown calls this week. Looks like he pretty much... Jaden Reed, number 1 wide receiver after this week, by the way. I saw that stat. What else did you find?
Well, Chris lost by 66.6 points. And even if he would have added in his bench points, he still would have lost by 53. His prayers to the running back gods went unanswered when CMC sat on Monday night. And quite honestly, it's not a good sign when your kicker, who misses a field goal, outperforms one wide receiver, one running back, and one flex spot you started combined. Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, CMC, a 0. You didn't know that he was not going to play. You know, that's the way it goes. Not that it really
It wouldn't have happened because there was no points on his bench.
You didn't have anything to backfill it anyways. Marvin Harrison Jr. had an awful game. He only had 1 target. DeAndre Hopkins, again, only 1 catch. There's going to be better days ahead for all of them. Unfortunately for Christian McCaffrey, it does not sound like there are better days ahead for him. I don't know if you saw the news today about CMC, that he has Achilles tendonitis, which is supposedly a long-running injury, and supposedly, depending on how severe it is, it could be a couple months, it could be a couple weeks. They don't really know necessarily how far it's going to be. The Madden curse strikes again, because that's what happened. He was on the Madden this year, Madden cover, and that seems to be the way that goes. Chris was very hopeful about his chances this season as of last night before the game even really got going. Chris has already said, you know what, I'm probably going to be out I'm going to be the deuce this year. Not only did he lose CMC for however long, Jordan Love is also going to be out for a few weeks here as well.
Well, not that he had anybody else on his team. Maybe putting our eggs in one basket, not the best strat. But again,
he put them in like 2 or 3 baskets. He spent all of his money on CMC, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jordan Jefferson, or Justin Jefferson. So other than that, yeah, it's not great.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, Brandon had pretty much a perfect week. It was a great matchup that would have beat pretty much anybody except maybe like Nick. Like he was in high 138. Yeah, his score was 138. Quite honestly, by the projections, the only thing he didn't get quite right is he maybe should have played Jerry Jeudy instead of Keon Coleman. But quite honestly, projection-wise, that was the right call at that time. It's just Jeudy got 2 more points. Really couldn't have improved on that week at all.
Pretty minimal.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Moving on. The closest game, Aaron, picking so bad it hurts, knocked off my Detective Pikachu, 105.9 to 104. It was a 1.9 point margin of victory. This one hurt.
Well, when Puka goes down, what was it? It wasn't even like halfway through the first quarter.
Yeah, it was. No, I think it was in the second quarter.
But he still didn't have any targets.
Yeah.
Oh no, he did have 8 points. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he had a decent night.
Yeah.
He had a decent night until the point where he got hurt and then he was out and that's you can't really predict that.
No.
And if I could have, I would have put in Rashid Shaheed, and then that wouldn't have been a problem, and I would have won easily. But
well, why do I sit here? Because that's exactly what I was going to say. But
I can only talk about my team that way. I don't know anything about any of these other idiots' teams.
Well, Corder had pretty much the perfect game too. He left like no points on his bench, so no, you would have been hard for you to beat him anyway. So
he left. Looks like 4 points he could have picked up from getting Brock Bowers in instead of Dallas Goedert, but other than that, it looks like 0, 0, 0, and Gus the Bus were 3.8 points, which was not an improvement over anybody else.
Exactly, and you're not going to do that. That's not.
Yep.
If you're playing by the numbers and not vibes.
Yeah, fair enough.
So,
all right, moving on. Next matchup we're going to cover is Drew's D-, which I believe was his draft grade, which that's a great team name. I love that. Versus our current Deuce. Trent's deucing in Laporta John, which is another good team name here.
Yes, it is.
Drew knocked off Trent for 110.3 to 89.7.
Well, good news, Trent, is you still would have beat Chris. My advice for you is perhaps you should find a quarterback that's, I don't know, younger than the majority of the people in the league. Because we all old as hell. So, Aaron Rodgers washed. Pretty much washed. Perhaps we should.
Okay, can we?
He doesn't even have a quarterback on his bench. That's the problem.
Let's give Aaron Rodgers a little bit of credit here. He didn't look great last night, but he's playing San Francisco. Mm-hmm. San Francisco was the best team in the NFC last year. They stomped on Green Bay, and not only that, but Aaron Rodgers can't beat San Francisco when he had, was younger and had a better talent around him when he was on Green Bay. Why would he have been all of a sudden been able to beat them when now he's on the Jets and an worse team? So, it is what it is. Yeah, he had a kind of a crappy night, but it was his first game back in 2 years. Give the man a little bit of credit.
I'm sorry, Peyton Manning, who couldn't move his neck, still looked better than Aaron Rodgers did last night.
Ouch. All right. Anything else for this matchup that you want to weigh in on?
Yeah. Drew probably should have went the other way with the quarterbacks, but it did work out for him because he still won. The mid-teens players did what mid-teens players do and be spotty.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting this week as I see you started Joe Burrow. The Bengals lost to the Patriots. I got a news alert on Sunday after that game had gotten over with that that game knocked out 43% of all ESPN Survivor Pool players that they were banking on the Bengals beating the Patriots, and of course the Bengals came out and shit the bed like they tend to do from time to time, and that is what it is. So. I did notice, you started Xavier Worthy, which was a really good call. He had a hell of a game and looks really good for the Chiefs, so that'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Cool. Moving on. Ethan's pretty good team. The Niners homer here gets first week in the season, gets his first win, knocking over Eric's what? Question mark. 103.2 to 86.3.
I think, that was kind of a decent win for Ethan, seeing as Mixon scored a third of Eric's points. He put up 29.8 points.
I mean, Saquon Barkley did that for me, and he didn't comment on that for me at all.
Well, that's because everybody else, single-digit points for poor Eric, besides maybe Kyler Murray, who obviously... was solid, but not stellar.
Yeah, I mean, Javonte Williams was only 3. Travis Kelce didn't really do much with 6. Deontay Johnson was one of the preseason. Everybody's like, oh, Deontay Johnson's going to be a sleeper this year. 3.9 points. Now, to be fair, the Carolina kind of got steamrolled by the Saints. At one point, I was watching Red Zone after we came in, and it was like 1:15, and all of a sudden I got a little Scott Hansen's like, oh, yeah. It's with that score they go up 30-0, and I look up and I'm like, wait, Carolina's down 30-0? I thought they'd be up 30-0. Yeah, as it turns out, that's not working so good in Carolina. So hopefully they can get that ship corrected.
Also, missed by Eric was Brian Robinson Jr. Turns out that Austin Eckler, didn't really affect his game any, and he put up 17 points from Eric's bench. Also, I had a good giggle that our favorite San Francisco homer had Purdy on the bench and probably should have played him because he scored more than Williams. So,
I mean, they both were not great. I mean, 7 points versus 10 points, not. And that's the thing is, Brock Purdy, his team won in dominant fashion, but he only had 230 yards and no touchdowns. So, not a great performance for him overall. But a win's a win. I'm on the losing end of the matchups this week. So what do I know?
Yeah, but starting a Bears quarterback, that's a bold strategy, So,
this week on Reddit on Monday, I saw a great graphic that somebody is going to track the Caleb Williams climb to 4,000 yards because the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. And then he only had 93 yards this week, and it was hilarious. He's like, it kind of feels mean-spirited. It wasn't meant to be that, but you'll expect to see this every week. So it should be interesting to see what happens with Caleb Williams as he moves into next week and the weeks beyond. Mm-hmm. So, all right, and then moving on, Lee's Cup My Balls knocked off Scott and Josh's Pocket Dogs, 129.4 to 106.7.
Very appropriate this week. Cooper Kupp with 32 points, pretty much carrying Lee to that victory. Gotta give a shout out to Josh and/or Scott for playing Mike Evans this week. He put up 23 points.
Mike Evans and Devon Achane both put up 23.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yep, Achane did too. I just went for the highest score there. So, this was a really good play for everyone. Scott could have played Brian Thomas and gotten a few more points. Lee nailed it perfectly. He didn't leave too many points sitting on his bench, so
Yeah.
I think that was a really good matchup. Everybody played pretty effectively, so.
Yeah, not too bad of a game there. So,
Turns out when you have a bunch of good players instead of, 3 good ones and just a bunch of scrubs.
She doesn't sound like she's a big fan of the stars and scrubs method there, Chris.
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, and then finally our last matchup, Will's Galactic Gibbs Gang. Thank you for that tongue twister. I appreciate that. Knocked off Tom's Always the McBridesmaid, which I really like that team name. 115.6 to 101.1.
Well, Tom was a bridesmaid this week because, he went with the ancient running backs versus the young running backs. Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, both 30 or almost 30. He played them over J.K. Dobbins and Jordan Mason, who are both 25, and put up 25 points each.
There's J.K. Dobbins is only 25.
Yeah, I looked it up.
J.K. Dobbins feels like he's 47.
Well, I mean, in running back years, Austin Eckler feels dead. So let's be real here.
Yeah, fair enough.
Projections said one thing, but that was one of those deals where, maybe should have at least put one of them in to hedge your bets, right? One old, one young.
He's got 4 really good running backs with Henry, Eckler, with Dobbins, and then with Mason, especially if CMC is going to be out for a while. Mason looked really, really good. Even if he comes back, if he's got knee problems, you're going to want to probably maybe 50-50 him rather than, pulling him, okay, CMC's back, let's let him carry the weight again. I expect we're going to probably see more of Jordan Mason going on through this season. So Tom's running backs are looking quite stacked. And good QB position.
His quarterbacks are
Richardson
stacked
and Stroud. Too. It's just it didn't work out for you this week. The flex spot looks like it really was the one that hurt you the most. Opting to start Romo Dunze. The Caleb Williams, only the 93 yards there, that really hurt you quite a bit here, where you only had 1 catch for 11 yards from Odunze.
Yeah, Tom most definitely is the person who should be hitting up for trades, that's for sure. Some of those position players he's got. As for Will, Allen put up 31 points. And that pretty much was a decider. Everybody did damn near the projection. T also didn't leave any points on his bench. Luckily, he doesn't have anybody in IR spots right now, which I thought was great for him. All his players are healthy and available. So, that's about all I had to say about that matchup, because I was really intrigued by that running back deal. So.
Yeah. This is one of the matchups with two quarterbacks who actually had very good games. Mm-hmm. Was it last night or at some point I was watching some football the last couple of days, and there was a stat that had said that this weekend was like the 5th worst week 1 in the last 20 years in terms of passing yards. The QBs sucked pretty hard this week, so we'll see what continues to happen from there. In terms of new wagers, we do have our wager going for our IDP players. We've all got 6 guys that we've picked, a couple of defensive linemen, a couple of defensive backs, and a couple of linebackers. The people that are the people that are in that wager is myself, Aaron Corder, Scotty B, and Tom. So that's for a 6-pack. At some point, I'm just going to try to get that information entered so I can pull the data every week. I just have not gotten to that yet, so we'll be getting to that here in the next couple weeks. For the time being, that's all I've got until next week. Any other final words to say before you get out of here?
No, not really. Pretty solid first week from most, and season's not lost yet. You got a few more weeks yet to turn things around. So,
yeah. All right, see you next week.